It's 7:35. At this time, we're going to cover item 2, report by superintendent. 2A is presentation on student achievement. 2B is high school allotment presentation. And 2C is report and discussion related to changes in election law and the impact on district elections. Dr. Burns?
Thank you, Ms. Klein, and members of the board. We'll begin tonight's report with the presentation on the aspect of student achievement, which is an important part of, obviously, every board meeting is to communicate to you about what's happening in student achievement. And tonight, consistent with our kind of culture of continuously improving, we want to bring to you a restructuring effort for student success. And the foundation of this district is about constantly getting better and finding more innovative and better ways for student achievement results. So we are pleased tonight to bring you some restructuring efforts from Educational Services Division regarding student success. So I'll give it to Dr. Mayer for some more detail. Dr. Mayer.
Thank you, Dr. Burns. This spring, we've had several pieces of information that resulted in us restructuring some of our staff for student success. We believe strongly that the moves we've made this spring will result in even higher success. And we want to share our journey, if you will, with you this evening. This next slide, our objectives, certainly I think you could build a case that this restructuring effort would address each and every one of our supporting objectives and certainly our district goal. However, it's most tightly linked with Objective 1, and that is continuously improving student achievement. I'm going to talk to you first. I have some colleagues here with me that are going to participate in this presentation because they definitely have been key players in this restructuring effort. I'm going to talk to you about the context and sort of how we got to this place and how the restructuring effort occurred. Tracy Smith, our Executive Director for School Improvement, is going to talk to you about the instructional infrastructure. And then Pam Smith and Susan Kelly will talk about literacy and math support and how all of this fits together. Context. There are multiple measures that we look at, quantitative and qualitative data, that really were the impetus for this change or this restructuring. Student achievement data, as Dr. Burns says, we are constantly monitoring student achievement data, and we're constantly monitoring multiple kinds of student achievement data. Equity has kind of emerged in as a factor and an impetus for this change, and we'll be talking to you about that. And then the importance of clear roles and responsibilities for high leverage instructional positions and how key that is to student success. When we look at student achievement data, as I indicated earlier, we monitor quantitative data and qualitative data. Here's examples of some quantitative data, and this is a criterion reference test, and it's our tax data. You will recognize that. You're looking at the percentage of students over a 4-year trend line who have met the standard in reading ELA for grades 3 through 11. Now, you will notice you're not only looking at CFB, you're also looking at the state, and you're also looking at HEB and Richardson. You might be asking yourself, well, we understand why we're looking at the state, but why are we looking at HEB and Richardson? As you will remember, we have shared with you that we are monitoring our progress with an instrument designed by the Educational Resource Group, ERG, that looks at academic performance index, financial performance index, and then an educational productivity index. In API, that looks at the largest 200 districts in the state of Texas and gives them an academic performance index and literally ranks them as to their achievement. The number 1 district for API is Richardson. The number 8 district is HEB. But when HEB combines its financial performance index, it comes out to be number 1. So Dr. Burns is always urging us to compare ourselves to the best. And so, in the spirit of transparency, we are comparing ourselves to the best. You will note that the trend line for CFB in meeting standard on reading ELA is flat. And what I can also tell you is that when we look at our trend line for our other subjects of writing, social studies, math, and science, that's not been the case. We have had a trend line that's been continually improving. So that this trend line is flat has caught our attention, whereas we're not significantly below our top competitors. We certainly are not where they are. So this is one piece of data that we monitor and look at. A second piece are our commended scores. We have a long-standing philosophy that we are not about just getting students barely over the line on any assessment. We want students to flourish and do very well, and that means having our students achieve at the commended level. The commended level simply means that students are getting more answers correct on the assessments that they take, a very high percentage, and usually 90% or above. Again, you can see that we are comparing ourselves to HEB and Richardson, and although we are certainly comparable with the state, CFB always aspires to be ahead of the state, and we are in our other subjects. That's why this has caught our attention. And this is where HEB and Richardson sort of pull away from us, is at the commended level, and so it's something that is definitely on our radar screen and something that we want to improve. Additionally, when we look at norm reference data, which I don't have a slide for, but I want you to know that we monitor how we're doing, not only comparing ourselves to other students in the state of Texas, but how are our students stacking up when we compare them to students across the nation. And what we find is we are about even in reading. And yet in our other subjects, math, social studies, science, we score above the nation. So again, that's just another piece of information that has been part of the data piece that's caused us to consider this restructuring effort. The next area that I want to talk about that's been an impetus for this change is really about equity. You know, fair isn't always equal. And to illustrate this point, I'd like to walk us briefly through a tale of two campuses. You have Campus A and you have Campus B. Notice Campus A's size, 697 students, and Campus B, 469. That's a considerable difference. Some other noteworthy information on this slide revolves around the percentage of students who are economically disadvantaged. On Campus A, we have 82.8% that are economically disadvantaged, and Campus B, 39%. That's a 43.8% difference in these two campuses regarding the number of students who come to them of poverty. Mobility rate, Campus A has a 27.5% mobility rate, Campus B, 17.6%. When you look at the limited English proficiency percentage, Campus A, 47.8%, Campus B, 13%. That's a 34.8% difference in the percentage of students that speak multiple languages. Some additional information on Campus A and Campus B. You can see that there is a more veteran staff at Campus B, and the staff has been with the district. Therefore, we know they've had a lot of good staff development because they've been with us longer. Campus A is a bilingual campus. Campus B is not. When you look at achievement data, you see a discrepancy between Campus A and B in Met Standard as well as commended in reading. You see similar data in math There's quite a difference, especially at the commended level, and you see that is pretty consistent theme throughout the data. When you look at nationally normed data for Campus A and Campus B, you will see that Campus A is not meeting the national norm. They're close, but they're not meeting it. Campus B is exceeding the national norm in areas of reading, math, and science. So they're exceeding other students around the nation in those areas. The bottom part of that talks about our response to intervention. You can see that there are more students that are on what we call tiers. Basically, what that means is there are more struggling students at Campus A than at Campus B. Now then, Campus A is McWhorter. Campus B is Rainwater. And we have had a tendency in this district to want to give equal services to all of our schools. And what that means on the instructional support side of the house is we have a position that we've called instructional facilitator, and we have given campuses 2 instructional facilitators. And yet, it's pretty clear that Campus A, McWhorter, probably needs additional support. We find ourselves in an interesting position because we don't have a lot of extra funds to give them just additional support. So this is another piece of the puzzle as we thought through these restructuring efforts. Now, let me say this. McWhorter is a high-performing and high-functioning school. That's not at all what we're saying. In fact, when you look at the comparison for their what we call academic performance index, they are beating 147 schools that have similar demographics to them. So clearly, they're doing a lot of things right. When you look at their EPI, their educational productivity, they're beating 179. So we're showing that McWhorter's doing well, but we also see that there's an equity piece with the existing staff and resources we have that we feel like we need to address. Okay, the last piece of the puzzle that was really the impetus for this restructuring effort hovers around our high-leverage instructional positions. It's this third piece really sort of served as a tipping point for me. We have a new language arts coordinator, Ms. Susan Kelly, who's doing a wonderful job. She's not really new to CFB. She used to be at CFB, so she finally came back home, and we're so glad she did. But as we're dialoguing and having meetings about the data that we're monitoring on how to improve it, one of the key things she talked to me about was some more of these instructional support positions. And we know that we don't have a lot of funds for a lot more of those, and we have some other needs that we want to address. But one thing that we know is that we have high-leverage instructional positions on our campuses in the form of instructional facilitators. So that prompted us to talk about some goals with these instructional facilitators of clarifying the expectations on their roles. From a historical perspective, let me say to you that many of the teachers who serve as an instructional facilitator at the elementary level were reading recovery teachers at one time or ESL teachers at one time. And we've sort of restructured and morphed their role to be more of instructional support, trying to address the ever-increasing challenges of student achievement. So we thought we needed to step back, clarify roles, and make sure that everyone knew exactly what they needed to be doing to help us in our goal for high student achievement for all students. We also knew that these roles must support high-quality instruction. And then lastly, we need to make sure that those students who are struggling, those ones that you saw on that tier, that they get really good intervention and we have good safety nets for them. So that meant that we stepped back and talked about everything that we've been learning in the last I'd say 5 years, about what really is leading to good student achievement. And this particular quote here really resonates with us because we understand that it's critical that we have to have a high-performing coaching cultures is critical to our future success. This quote by Bill Hewlett, men and women want to do a good job, and if they are provided the proper environment, they will do so. We believe that totally. Our teachers want to do the best job they can possibly do. But what we also know is to improve your craft, to improve your practice, you must have coaching, mentoring, and a good support system, even when desire is high. It is not easy to do. So, with that thought in mind, we restructured the instructional facilitator roles, and we created some new job descriptions. We created a literacy instructional coach, a math instructional coach. Out of these existing positions, we took no new positions. Out of these same existing positions, we created these two, and then instructional facilitators. And Tracy and Pam and Susan are going to share with you exactly what the roles of each and every one of these support positions is in the district.
Thank you. We want to talk just a little bit about the instructional support infrastructure and how we came about the system that we have in place. First of all, Dr. Mayer already alluded to that we went through a process, and that process began with reviewing data. And that data was both hard data, the things that she's talked to you about, RTI data, MAP data, tax data, etc., and also some soft data. And that soft data that I'm speaking of were some of our instructional facilitators talking to us about feeling like they were a tug-of-war rope. They, on one hand, had boys and girls who they knew needed additional support and services, and on the other hand, had teachers that they knew were begging for additional time to help them to improve their craft. And unfortunately, there are only so many hours in a day, and so they were feeling torn. If I give all my time to students, then I'm neglecting the teachers, and vice versa. So with that, we really came up with, we wanted to have a vision for what that restructuring looked like, that we could help the students, we could help the teachers, and last but not least, it's very important to principals, as a past principal myself, to have an instructional team that is available regularly to meet with you to talk about the instructional support systems that are on your campus, the instructional issues that were there. And as we restructured, we didn't want to pull that away from the principals as well, because in many cases in elementary school, there is a principal, no assistant principal, and it's lonely. You need somebody else to be able to talk about the ideas and to be able to make the best decisions. So we started with a small team, and that team did a lot of talking, a lot of dialoguing about what things are going well with the system that we have in place and where are our issues. We came up with, and you'll see in a minute, some job descriptions, but really the job descriptions started emerging as that small team started to get together. Well, if we say that we have issues with being pulled with students and teachers, how are we going to create these new job descriptions so that we don't make people feel badly when they come to work every day? And we then took that infrastructure that we came up with, we took it to principals and said, okay, poke holes. Here are some of the ideas that we have, and I'll show you more of what that looks like in just a minute. What problems do you see? What things are going to be strengths for you? And believe me, they're great at giving you ideas and input and helping you to make it better. So we really have valued that. But that group of individuals weren't the only ones that were important to us. So we also took it to the instructional specialists, because we were changing the way that their job worked a little bit, and of course the instructional facilitators. We want you to know that we were very cognizant of when we change somebody's job assignment, what does that do to them personally? And how will they view the new job delineations that we have come up with? So we had a meeting with them, talked to them in small groups to give them time to ask questions, give us their feedback, and again, they were great at giving us feedback. With that, we then tweaked job responsibilities and looked at what does this really need to look like, because we're now going to take those job descriptions and open them up to all instructional facilitators who were interested. It was funny because as we sat around the table and we said, okay, we're gonna have interviews for all of these, and some people said, oh, nobody's gonna apply for these jobs, and other people said, oh, that's not the case, I think there are going to be a lot. Well, I can tell you that we had 32 applicants for 18 jobs. So it was most of the people saying, I really want to be an instructional coach. I want to help teachers, but saying I'd be totally happy if I stay an instructional facilitator and working with children as well. So we interviewed each and every one of them, and one of the questions that we asked each and every one of them was, if you were the one to get this position, what support would you need to be successful? And we took copious notes on that question because we wanted to then structure our planning, our preparation, our staff development for these people around those particular needs. And then finally, we assigned the staff. We assigned the staff based on the needs of the particular campuses and the strengths of those particular instructional facilitators who were moving into new positions. So we kind of came up with this system. First of all, before, the principal kind of was the lead for the specialists and the facilitators on their campus. And we said that really needs to come more at a central office level. So we wanted to get the coordinators more involved because they are the ones who are the content area. Sorry, I have a bug here. They are the ones who know the content and the ways to present it best to the campuses. So even though this looks hierarchical, it really is not as hierarchical as it appears. It's just my way of trying to give you a visual to look at. So with the coordinator in the area of math and in the area of language arts, we have 3 instructional specialists. I'm not going to go into job descriptions for you at this moment because the next presentation will give you just a little bit more about that. Those instructional specialists are currently in place, so they were just the ones pretty much who had been there the past year who will continue in that role. And they've had some phenomenal training and will help to lead us well under the tutelage of the coordinators. Then we hired 9 instructional coaches, 9 math instructional coaches, 9 language arts instructional coaches. And again, I'm going to remind you, when I say hire, it was really kind of a reassignment, not anybody that came in that was brand new. And those instructional coaches, you'll see that they're underneath one instructional specialist. We really tried to set it that way so that they all had a common core to come back and speak with, a support system, if you will, to be able to help out. Then there are instructional facilitators that work on campuses. Again, you'll hear more about those job descriptions in a moment. And that, again, is math and language arts. Finally, with our RTI interventions, those are interventionists currently in place. No new people were added for that, and that is only in the area of language arts. We do not have RTI interventionists in the past, nor currently for the area of mathematics. So then again, with our visuals and the way of thinking about things, we came up with what we call learning communities. And you remember that for each subject we had an instructional specialist, so there are really 3 learning communities in our overall scheme. And there is a math and a language arts specialist that kind of oversees, and I don't want to say acts like a coordinator because I don't mean to I can do it. I don't mean to change the titles with anybody, but they will help to oversee the functioning of their particular learning community. Then within each learning community, you also have an instructional coach, one for math, one for language arts, in each of the hubs, and then you'll have 3 hub schools. Just very nicely ended up that we had 27 elementary schools. If you consider the primaries as a separate campus, and if you consider Kelly Pre-K, and they deserve the same type of support and intervention that every other campus does, so they are included in our model. So each one of the hubs does have 3 schools underneath it. And for the most part, the people that function in that hub stay within that hub. Again, for that support system, because as I'm traveling around amongst those 3 schools, we can start to look for patterns, start to look for trends, and then before you know it, hopefully those math people are talking to the language arts people and saying, hey, dialogue is something we want to work on here, or I'm really seeing an issue with questioning. That's where we want to go with this particular campus. Even though it looks like everybody is the same on here, as Dr. Mayer alluded to earlier, fare is not always equal. We did have to take a look at what are the needs of the particular campuses. If you're a McWhorter on this particular system, you're not going to look the same as the Rainwaters. And so as we assigned staff, we looked at how many RTI students do they have? How many students are reading below level? How many students are on level? Mathematically, how many students are in RTI groups and how many are struggling? So all of that ended up being a factor in how we came up with our learning communities.
Good evening. I want to talk with you a little bit about the specific roles of specialists and coaches and instructional facilitators and response to intervention specialists. So we have instructional specialists, again, and literacy coaches now, and instructional facilitators, and response to intervention teachers. So I'm going to use this visual again because I think it's easier to sort of visualize the big picture that way. The primary responsibility of the instructional specialists, and there are 3 of them, will be to oversee 9 schools, essentially. They'll help look at data, look at data trends, keep track of MAP data, TPRI data, which is the assessment that we use for K1 and 2 students, reading levels, and that sort of thing. They will be participating in and or leading grade level meetings. So we're putting together new curriculum this year, and so there will be lots of questions and dialoguing about new units of study, and so we're going to have our specialists help teachers look ahead and think about what those lessons require of them and what it is specifically we're teaching. They will sometimes conduct focused walkthroughs with principals and look for a specific kind of thing. They might be looking for the level of questions that teachers are asking students, or the amount of reading that students seem to be doing. That might be one of their responsibilities. They'll coach teachers. So we want specialists because they have a high level of expertise to work in classrooms with teachers, so they'll be doing some of that work. And they'll also coach coaches. So the new coaches are new to that position, and the instructional specialists have been in those roles already. So they'll provide help for brand new coaches. They'll conduct in-service trainings. We'll have Monday afternoon trainings, language arts trainings, and so they'll handle some of that. And any kinds of trainings that principals require or request, they'll handle that kind of thing. And they'll help principals and staffs help set goals for instruction. The primary responsibility of a coach is to be in classrooms shoulder to shoulder with teachers, helping them with their craft, helping them move forward in terms of their pedagogy. So what we envision is that coaches will have 3 schools, of course, and one school being a little more high needs than another, so that's where we're going to differentiate for schools that have a higher need. So coach would probably spend 2 weeks out of 4 at one of their high needs campuses, and then 1 week at each of the other 2 campuses that they're responsible for. We have a set schedule for them, so we know exactly where they'll be and exactly who they'll be working with. With the help of principals, they have chosen, some of them, staff that they're going to be working with. And we want coaches to coach not only staff that are new to a grade level or new to teaching or that seem to need a lot of help, but staff that is just wanting to move their craft forward. So everybody deserves a coach. So that is their primary responsibility. Instructional facilitators, their primary responsibility will be to work with Tier 3 students, so kids that are really, really struggling. Although we might ask them to do some follow-up work in classrooms with teachers, so if a coach has been working with a teacher for a couple of weeks, we might ask an instructional facilitator to come in and do some walkthroughs and encourage the classroom teacher. So there will be some of that kind of work, but the facilitator will generally be working with Tier 3 students. And finally, RTI specialists work only with Tier 3 students, so that their responsibility is always to work with kiddos that are really, really struggling in our district. They provide 45-minute lessons for them, and they're highly qualified to do that. Are there questions about?
So what's the difference between the RTI interventionists and the IFs?
The RTI interventionists will probably never, ever work with classroom teachers. The instructional facilitators.
You're saying the IFs do work with teachers as well?
They will occasionally, yes. They have a high level of expertise. Their primary role is to work with students. They have an understanding of good instruction, so we'll have them do some work in classrooms because they're there all the time. So
they'll work primarily, though, with Tier 3 students.
That's correct. Thank you.
Over a decade ago, the National Councils of Teachers of Math wrote the principles and standards for mathematics and laid out the following vision. Imagine a classroom, a school, or a school district where all students have access to high-quality, engaging mathematics instruction. There are ambitious expectations for all, with accommodation for those who need it. Knowledgeable teachers have adequate resources to support their work and are continuously growing as professionals. The curriculum is mathematically rich, offering students opportunities to learn important mathematical concepts and procedures with understanding. Technology is an essential component of the environment. Students confidently engage in complex mathematical tasks chosen carefully by teachers. They draw on knowledge from a wide variety of mathematical topics, sometimes approaching the same problem from different mathematical perspectives or representing the mathematics in different ways until they find methods that enable them to make progress. Teachers help students make, refine, and explore conjectures on the basis of evidence and use a variety of reasoning and proof techniques to confirm or disprove their conjectures. Students are flexible and resourceful problem solvers. Alone or in groups and with access to technology, they work productively and reflectively with the skilled guidance of their teachers. Orally and in writing, students communicate their ideas and results effectively. They value mathematics and engage actively in learning it. Dr. Mayer and I had the opportunity several weeks ago to sit down, and I told Sheila that I started one of my summer math institutes this summer with that, thinking about the journey that we've been on in this district in math. And I told Sheila, I said, you know, when you go back and you read that and you think about how ambitious it was, I remember just thinking, was that even possible? As a young coordinator coming in, sometimes things like that just seemed like it was so out of hand. So I'm going to walk you through the journey that we've been through in this district. Number one, the principals heard Dr. Phil Darrow address the future of mathematics in this country and the immediate need for reform. In the summer of 2007, we brought Lucy West, which authored the content-focused coaching, into our district, who led mathematics teachers and principals in this reform. She engaged us in crucial conversations about effective math instruction and what it meant for this district to move to the high quality that was needed. Lucy continued the work with us in the year 2008 school year by working with teachers and the math instructional facilitators that she's alluded to in the other slides. And what we did was we worked to just deepen their content knowledge, and here we go with this ghost, but that's okay. In the summer of 2008, we hired 5 mathematics specialists whose primary role was to coach teachers. This was also the year, as you remember, I've given several talks before, that was the year we also adopted a curriculum that was tightly aligned to the vision that the NCTM set forth. That's also the summer we trained over 600 teachers of mathematics. During the 2008-2009 school year, the specialists then directly coached teachers on each campus. They met with grade levels to lesson study by using the instructional improvement process protocol. They provided Math Mondays to stay 1 unit ahead of the curriculum scope and sequence. That year, we also partnered with Metamorphosis Learning and brought in Tony Cameron. Tony Cameron coached the coaches, and I can remember when we first put the coaches in, the first thing they said was, well, you're giving all these teachers support by us, but how are we going to know if we're doing it right? Because this is such a new role. Tony was instrumental in working directly with our coaches and teachers. We were on campus after campus after campus with her side by side us. She helped our specialists really become master coaches. Lucy continued to work 2 to 3 times a year that year and was really then just working with the teachers who were being coached and also the campus instructional facilitators and principals. We also offered again the Math Summer Institute for anybody who was new to the grade level or new to CFB because we wanted continuous learning. During the 2009-2010 school year, we continued the partnership with Tony Cameron. This time, our focus was on getting our math specialists to help us run professional learning communities. The professional learning communities are run at each campus, at each grade level, and they really do lesson study. They sit around a table and look at possible misconceptions prior to teaching the unit. They're consistently looking at the data from that campus to make important decisions. We were instrumental in changing the after school to a focused tutoring based on the data. They continued with their Math Mondays, and I know if you're here, you hear lots of teachers talk about Math Mondays, and I'm telling you, it's to the point now that, and I'll just give you a for instance. We posted Math Mondays before the school year ended in May. We haven't started school yet, and my Math Mondays are completely filled to capacity for the entire year. So either I have to go find some willing teachers to help us on Mondays to get more teachers in because they really, really enjoy coming on Monday afternoons and getting ahead of the ball game. This past school year was the first time for us to stand alone. Even though I was, still closely tied to Lucy and Tony via email, it wasn't quite the same. And over the years, our specialists have gone from 5 to 4 to 3, as you can see from the restructuring. But what I now have is I have all these wonderful math instructional facilitators that worked on the campuses now as math coaches. And I want to tell you that I don't really know, I was trying to think while sitting there, I think there's really only one that has not been on this journey with us through the whole entire time. So I'm very, very blessed to have these people joining our team. They will continue this year with the math specialists running the PLCs, which is the professional learning communities. They will also coach coaches. So what I want you to know is that on Friday afternoons over at the CLC, you will see the math specialists sitting with all the math coaches, and they will be actually going through the units of study to make sure that they're up to speed and also helping them learn everything that they learned through Tony Cameron's work and helping them become the best coaches that they can be. As you walk today through many elementary classrooms in CFB, then you're going to see the evidence of this journey. You're going to see teachers who are truly guides on the side. You will see students actively engaged in classroom discussions, presenting their work. You'll see kids writing in journals. You'll see classroom walls that are filled with anchor charts, calendar math, examples of student work. While everything that I'm sharing with you right now seems very qualitative, I want to share a little quantitative data with you. This past year in the elementary mathematics, the percent of students who met the standard at the 3rd grade level was 91%. That's the highest we've had in several years. 41% of them were commended. In grade 4, 92% were met standards and 41% were commended. In 5th grade, 90% were met the standards and 49% commended. I don't stand here today to slight the efforts of the work that HEB does because they're my colleagues. Teresa Moles is my friend. But I do want you to know that our commended scores exceeded HEB in grades 3, 4, and 5. We were, I know, woohoo, we just want to scream. But anyway, that's excitement, and that's not because of just what the coaches have done, but it's because that the district, I think, has allowed us to put in a model And the school board and Dr. Burns has supported this. Dr. Mayer's always been right there beside me going, go, go, go. The specialists have worked very, very hard, but when it all comes down to it, guys, it's the teachers that made the the difference in those classrooms. And I just watching them move and watching them grow and watching what their kids are able and capable of doing is just overwhelming. We were at 3% below the grade 5. If you look at MET standards, HEB outperformed us by, they have more kids passing by 1 percentage point, but we have more commended. So we have more kids that are really ready for the next grade level, and we're going to continue to have that, grow and grow and grow. So as we continue to gear up for another year of testing, and all of you know that we're about to head into a new arena here, I am very confident to tell you that I think our kids are prepared. I think that we will continue to have kids that can critically think, and they'll be able to look at any text that's given to them, whether it's familiar or unfamiliar. Any questions? Dr. Mayer.
Thank you, Pam. The last piece for the impetus for this change and restructuring really was some of the good work that we've done in mathematics. What we've seen through our professional support roles, specialist roles, and the coaching is we need a similar infrastructure for reading. So that was certainly part of our thinking as well. We've come back full circle here to our supporting objective 1, and I think we've done that so that we can promise you that it's just not lip service when we say we are continuously increasing and evaluating student achievement. That is what we are doing all the time, and we believe this restructuring effort, we hope to bring you higher achievement in reading. We understand that reading is the backbone of all the subjects. It's critically important, and we're on a relentless pursuit of increasing our student achievement in that arena, that subject. Questions?
Yes, I have one. When we compare with HEB and Richardson, are we comparing comparable demographics?
Well, not exactly. We have, we're about 62% free and reduced lunch. Economically disadvantaged, Richardson's about 57, and HEB is 49 or 50. It depends on exactly what piece of information you looked at. Recently in the newspaper, we were listed as 60, and Richardson 57, and HEB 50. We have a larger LEP population than the other districts.
But Ms. Walton, we might add, though, that
Yes.
Under our ERG analysis, there's a regression model that levels the playing field. So
Yes.
when we're saying they're comparing them on their academic performance index, they are competing with us just like we're competing with them with a level playing field. So they're still a competitor we've got to shoot at because they're getting results.
The numbers that you saw are apples to apples, numbers to numbers. But as Dr. Burns indicates, on ERG, their API, when we compare our API, we were 17th out of 200 schools. When they compared to their API, Richard was number 1. That is an apples-to-apples comparison due to the regression, linear regression.
But we're talking about LEP children that we have more of,
Yes.
Yes, we do.
and then either one of those two districts,
Right, we do.
which I would think makes a huge difference when we're comparing 3 districts in percentages. I think it makes us look even better than them in the long run.
Yeah, I think you make a great point, Ms. Watton, that the fact that we're getting that kind of results from kids who, by nature of a limited English, are still progressing at a pretty high rate. It's pretty phenomenal. It's a testament to our teachers. They're doing a great job. And the coaches and the facilitators and the specialists and the coordinators. I mean, everybody, I can't tell you, everybody in this district is committed to student achievement. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
It's definitely a team effort, and I believe that the restructuring efforts that we have put in place, we're now in the 2nd year, next year will be in the 3rd year in our dual language program, will in the future net us higher achievement in all of the subjects. That's a prediction I will go on record as making.
So it's going to better define the instructional facilitator's job, I understand.
You know,
from
when
this
we
too.
wrote the instructional facilitator position, we definitely had the word that they were going to coach teachers, but what sort of happened over time was they ended up being pulled into doing lots of different things, and the role wasn't looking the same on
Right.
every campus. And so we've just pulled back and said, let's clarify these roles on what they absolutely need to be doing. And, you know, here's what's been so exciting. Our teachers, when they ask who would like to be coached, who be volunteered to be coached, they're also eager to have a coach. And it just speaks to the spirit of this district. Everyone wants to get better. Everyone knows that we can get better, always, and they want that feedback. And it's not about that anyone needs a coach. People deserve a coach. This is difficult, complex work, and they deserve this kind of support. You know, we talk about an infrastructure. You will hear me use the language, we need an instructional infrastructure to really move our student achievement forward. That's what we're describing to you tonight, the infrastructure. And I will say to you, we have a stronger infrastructure at elementary. Perhaps we need it. We're weaker at secondary. This is an area that I think we need to really think through, what's that infrastructure, because we have to continually be addressing teachers' craft and their pedagogy, as Susan said, because when you look into the research, what's most effective in getting student achievement, there are three factors always cited. Number one is teacher pedagogy, and that surprises people somewhat. You know, they think it's going to be their knowledge of the content. But number two, the relationships they can build with students, and number three is content knowledge. So it's critically important that we have an infrastructure where we systematically are improving teachers' pedagogy in the classroom. And I think we have the will. That's without question.
Dr. Mayo, you've used the term pedagogy a number of times,
Yes.
and I would bet you money
Okay.
that there are a lot of people that are listening to this or will listen to this who are not familiar with what that means.
Those are the strategies that teachers use to teach children, how they design the lessons, how they design the activities. It's the instructional design strategies in the classroom.
Thank you.
So did you also, I'm confused now, restructure for secondary, or is that something you're working on next? Is this all elementary?
Ms. Webb, this is all elementary. This is all elementary.
Makes me sad.
Working on it.
You're thinking right the way I'm thinking. It's on our things that we need to address. We have restructured how we are using some of our federal funds and been able to add some of the instructional specialists to the middle school level for next year through some federal funding and moving some things. But I think this is still an area of growth. And you know, we know that those teachers all need coaching as well.
Yes, they do.
You know, we use the word deserve a lot. They deserve things. And I hear it on television a lot, and I always kind of bristle. You don't deserve stuff, you earn it. But I think in this particular case, our teachers are working really, really hard, and they deserve support to help make them better. And our children deserve that as well, our students. I mean, the product that we want to have at the end of the day is a student who is qualified to graduate, academically ready to go on. And that means that we have to support them. And I'm really pleased from that particular perspective that we've come up with a way to recognize and quantify the issues between equality and equity. Mm-hmm. Because we've all known logically, if we think about it, that it's easier to educate some children than it is others. They come to school better prepared. And that's no fault of the child, and oftentimes it's no fault of the family, but we've got to help all of those kids. Mm-hmm. There is a fear in some parents' hearts, some people's hearts, that if you address equity as opposed to equality, then those children that are ready, that are more prepared to learn, are going to be shortchanged. And that's one of the things that I think we have to, as we talk about this, as we address this, we have to speak to those fears. Go ahead.
May I?
You may.
Okay. And you've probably heard us, both Dr. Burns and I, mention this before, but, you know, one of the best thinkers in our field right now is Dr. Richard Elmore, and he's a professor at Harvard. And sometimes they give him a sabbatical, and he just writes for all of us to read his brilliant writing, and he is brilliant. He tells us that he will show us schools where they are getting some of their student achievement through social capital. Students that come from high SES families prepared with deep background knowledge. And then he said, I'll take you to some schools to show you high student achievement with students of poverty. And they're getting it through instruction. But he said, here's the really interesting thing. When there is excellent instruction, even the high SES kids soar higher.
Correct.
No one loses from high quality instruction. Everyone is the winner, and even the students that bring a lot of social capital can learn more, can learn deeper, and have higher achievement. So the commitment to high quality instruction is a benefit to all students regardless of where they come from.
You're absolutely correct. And we saw this same effect in the late 80s when we had to do away with gifted and talented pullout with the ACE program. So that was due to money, but what the district did at that time was to teach every teacher how to deal with gifted and talented children and how to differentiate from that. And I believe as a district, our children profited from that, all of them.
Could I ask, Susan, I love the idea of coaching because we've seen it work in the math area, and I think the teachers are hungry for this. Will it replace the model classroom?
Well, we haven't brought the model classroom back to fruition this year. I think...
Susan, would you mind going to the mic, please?
Yeah, you better go to the mic, Susan.
Yeah, the idea of coaching is really to work with teachers within their own classroom with their own children, which is really, really powerful. So always a visual of good teaching is a good thing, and that model classroom was just that. But I think helping teachers using what's called the gradual release of responsibility model, so that a good literacy coach would provide a teaching demonstration for a teacher for a session or two, and then teach shoulder to shoulder with the teacher, sort of literally whispering in their ear, say this, do this, notice the children are doing this, and then gradually release the responsibility of that kind of teaching so that the coach is there as a support if the teacher, doesn't know what to do or what teaching move to make next, but the teacher is handling most of the work. And then finally, the literacy coach would really just observe the teacher and give the teacher formative feedback about their teaching. So we feel like that coaching model is going to shift teachers forward faster, probably.
Well, what I like about it is that it takes away that old stigma of non-negotiable. And what I see happening with the coaching as opposed to the model classroom is that the teachers are going to be able to use their own creative ways of teaching the content and the COL, but I don't see that they can have any excuse now to come to argue that they're not able to teach the way they want to teach within the guidelines of the curriculum.
Right.
By having somebody that will be able to coach them but be able to use their own way of doing things.
Right.
So
it's just offering that really good support and scaffolding for teachers
Right.
that we do with children too. So it's just sort of layered.
Right.
Yep.
It's great. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Dr. Mayer, thank you. That was, I think
And
we
thank
look
you to the
forward to
team.
seeing this program and watching it possibly grow further.
Thank you.
Dr. Burns, I was going to ask if I could introduce the audience for guests